Monday, October 3rd at 4 p.m. This agenda is subject to the revisions, additions prior to the meeting, and the meeting is being held at the old town hall. At this time, I will call to order. Mr. Chico,
Present, Ken Pacheco.
Mr. Karen,
Here.
Peter Karen is present, and Leonard Hull, Chairman of the Board. Welcome. Could we all rise for the pledge of allegiance to the flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Bowen.
Hey, Mr. Chairman, shouldn't they still open up
Yes.
that meeting, Board of Health?
Okay, calling to order. October 3rd, 2022, 4 p.m., maybe a little after. Meeting with the Dayton Board of Selectmen. And present being Bob Pacheco, who's chairman.
Nicole Melton, member. Rosalind Grash, the office manager.
Billing health agent.
I hand it over to you,
Thank you very much.
Mr. Hull.
Mr. Mullen, would you please? Did you have something prepared to say, or would you?
No, really, I just want to mention also for the record that the meeting is being recorded because it is a public meeting. But no, I mean, really, like we've been, oh yeah, oh yeah, this is something really we've been working on to different degrees for some time now. The Board of Health over the summer worked very diligently to really get us here to hopefully a jumping off point that really we can work from and really assess where we've been. Can really plan forward where we're going. So in the packet, we included really we have obviously the agenda. Included in the agenda on the second page, really, like the structure of how we can really kick off thoughtfully. How we go forward, how we reassess and assess really where we are. We're talking about the current structure that exists, talking about a discussion of the challenges facing the Board of Health and the department based on the current structure. Along with the discussion of the options that at the end of last month were presented by the Board of Health. With that, really breaking down the functions that the department has on a day-to-day basis as well, including those related to public health nursing, the stormwater responsibilities, food services, septic, housing, solid waste, housing. Actually, I just realized housing was a place, the transfer station, the opportunities that are going to be made possible through the Public Health Excellence Grant as well. And then really how that all informs any changes to the health agent job description. But really, I think like we've all had varying degrees of like our discussions and work together. I think we all may be at different places in terms of how we got here. I can know in the swing, a few of us we're having a discussion that kind of went sideways. A few of us are new to the process of really really trying to deal with addressing other challenges as they exist today as well. So we were thinking just really starting off with a discussion about what has been happening, what is the structure, and then the challenges inherent, and really accommodating the structure as it exists right now. So
Thank you very much. Ms. Catavia,
Yes,
as I have before me, I have the current Board of Health structure, option one, option two. And one and option two were developed by the Board of Health, the Board of Health working in conjunction, with Mr. Mullen, the both presented by Board of Health.
these were both presented by Board of Health.
Okay. Thank
We
you.
have the meeting with Mr. Mullin.
We'll get to that. Before we get into option one and two, the current structure. Could you or your staff explain under the current structure what is working in the judgment of the Board of Health and what isn't working in the Board of Health?
Okay. Would you like to take this, Todd?
Sure, I just don't have what's in front of me. What is working and what isn't working?
In your, yes,
Yeah, well, transfer station, it's not that it's not working, it's just that it's kind of partially managed by the highway director, and partially managed by us. I think a lot of this has come out in the solid waste committee as we've talked about that. But it works well because we get along well with everybody over there. So it's still working. I'm not saying it's not working, it's just a little disjointed. Same thing with animal welfare, like we do some parts of it and the animal inspector does some parts. And so that's kind of a little weird. But ultimately what it comes down to is just there's not enough hours in the day to do everything on this chart. So we are falling behind in keeping up with what needs to be done in order to keep them all just current, let alone investigating how to handle solid waste mattresses. Like we just don't have the time. And it's just, there's not enough time to do everything here for a staff of 2 bodies.
now the solid waste currently does not have, other than having a member on it, the primary management responsibility of solid waste Board of Health, is that correct?
Of solid waste, yes.
And gentlemen, excuse me 1 minute. When you look at this current structure, nowhere on here does it have the day-to-day Board of Health. Just regular job, what we do. This is all in addition to the regular office work that goes on. When we realized we did all this, we're missing at least half again as much work that isn't included in this, in the regular day-to-day running of the office.
I had a conversation, Mrs. Catavia, and were you able to put together a list of those job things that,
We have been working on it.
Okay.
As you know, Mr. Pilling was on vacation. And we had a lot to do last week with him not being here. We missed him. It's a very short time frame that we were basically all together. And that was today. I was in for maybe 3 hours this morning. They were here all day working on it. Roz, would you like to explain what you come up with?
Well, let me just give you a few, because this is a very. It's our first draft, so there's going to be things on here that are missing, things that we need to. Again, we tried to put this together as well as we could, but it's not ready to be presented to you yet. But we can just give you a few job duties that are in addition to this. So we have tanning, body art, marijuana, which we process all the application and permit fees for. We have tobacco, nursing homes, semi-private and public pools, recreational camps. Mosquitoes, so we have Tripoli, West Nile virus. The state, we get calls from the Health and Homeland Alert Network that we need to monitor those notifications. We need to, get out, if in the event of an emergency, be able to get out to the public what is going on. So housing. Sharp sales, so we handle all of that. So we have the inventory, collection, disposal, monitoring. That's just sharp. Trash bags. We handle the budget for 510 and 519, which is Board of Health Administration. and Board of Health regulations. We manage the website. I take care of the agendas, posting the meetings, minutes, the violations. We take care of all the inquiries into the office. So when someone calls and inquires about their septic, we have to research in the files. We have to get them the information, get that out to them. We handle complaints. So if someone complains about their neighbor next door, we have to first take the intake report, then figure out what is going on, initiate some sort of an inspection, and then draft a report. We take care of all of the payroll for the office staff, the public health nurse, transfer station attendant, assistant agent, and Board of Health members. We take care of the turn-ins for all of the fees that have come in and the transfer station. So the transfer station, their daily fees, they need to be monitored and then turned into the town treasurer. So all of that, and which isn't everything, is in addition to what you have as the current structure in front of you.
Do you also handle the drug program where they turn in medicines and drugs to the police department, or they handle
Yeah,
that?
the police department has stuff.
Or an inventory?
We just have the sharps disposal, which is the medical syringes.
But in very simple terms, this office handles a lot of phone calls, a lot of foot traffic. As people come in to get their stuff, we do a lot of field inspections. We have a website presence and we do a lot of subcommittee work. So it's just it's very disruptive day.
Chico, Mr. Karen, any questions?
We're on option one is the.
Well, we're still on the current structure because
Okay,
some of the things, Mr. Mullen, correct me if I'm wrong, that animal welfare, animal control at the next Board of Selectmen meeting.
Yeah, the animal, like at the last selectmen's meeting, based on the updated job description, for the ACO. And also for the animal inspector, we really wanted to consolidate that, like under the ACO herself. Reporting directly to the chief of police. And so, and along with the animal inspection responsibilities and the animal inspector, who happens to be also the ACO, is nominated by the town, but officially appointed by the state. In accordance with chapter 129 of the general laws, the animal inspector has statutorily assigned duties. But what really we tried to do was a lot of what the animal, so like a lot of what the animal inspector has been has been historically required to do. Expected to do really came from really guidance and directives from the Board of Health, and we wanted to really streamline that. So the animal inspector really got her directives from the statute, in terms of chapter 129. There are things working with the Board of Health we will need to really just really solidify as we move forward. Just as one example, we have a permit process for bond permits and stable permits through the Board of Health. So we will have to, we expected to talk about exactly where the optimal place for both bond and permitting processes are. Should they still be under the jurisdiction of the Board of Health with a recommendation to come out from the ACO? Should we modify or look or discuss it, modifying the process, to have, the ACO handle that all on their own? We don't have an answer for that yet. I think there could be merit for either way or another way. But really, we want to talk about that all here as part of the process as well.
And I also noticed that in looking at option one compared to the current structure, emergency prep is no longer there. And I believe that the emergency prep committee has been disbanded.
Yes.
And it is now under the direction of Chief McGee in the fire department. So that's,
That was just a subcommittee of the Board of Health that's been eliminated. This, all the duties of emergency preparedness, those we need to kick around too, but that's.
So yeah, the fire chief is the emergency management director. What the Board of Health does have responsibility for separately, is through the Department of Public Health. They have the responsibility of the emergency dispensing sites. So yeah, like when emergency dispensing sites are activated or required to be activated by the Commonwealth, like local boards of health, like have a responsibility to do that. However, if you look back at really the last 2 years, you know, all the training, frankly, that local boards of health have done, you know, really to prepare for and activate emergency dispensing sites when it came down to the distribution of the COVID vaccine, Commonwealth went in like another direction. But I mean, a very large part, like essentially any type of emergency, so like any type of emergency response that doesn't include emergency dispensing is under the control of the fire chief.
however, there are responsibilities that the Board of Health has in your jurisdiction. And with that being said,
So when.
are you ready? Is the Board of Health ready for any contingencies that are realistic that may come forward?
Contingencies, and I don't understand.
Potential emergencies,
Yes.
or do you make them up as they hit, which is kind of late in the game to do that?
Yeah, no, I mean, that's the whole preparedness portion of it, but the EDS portion of it is generally ours, but if there's a hurricane, it's not on us. If that's what you're asking, I don't.
Well, I don't know all the potential problems that you would have to deal with. And my question is, we're trying to figure out how much more we can put on your plate or what we're going to take off your plate. And if you say to me that you're not ready, you know, because in the spirit of things, you haven't been on board that long to create emergency plans for every problem that is responsibility of the Board of Health. Are you?
No.
Okay.
Um,
I mean, that's being realistic.
the orange binders that we have, there's like 22 of them. And they're not all full. They still have components missing out of them, such as behavioral. We don't have a contract with a bus line to transport all the Dayton people out of here if we had to. There's a lot of components of it that are not in place.
And that is your responsibility.
Well, that was part of the whole. At some point, it fell on the Board of Health's lap, yes, but we haven't been able to further that. But the EDS would still stay with us if an anthrax plane flies over Dayton, we have to get a vaccine into everybody's arm in 48 hours. And so that's when we would immobilize the EDS site.
So to take emergency,
As an example, that was just.
but to take emergency prep off of option one, and I don't see it on option two either,
No,
may not be a wise.
Mr. Mullen, when we originally submitted the first chart, we sat down with him the next day after the meeting and it was decided that, no, that wasn't, I think it was an expanded Board of Health structure that we submitted. And it was like, no, you guys need to go back to the drawing board, start over. So when we met with Mr. Mullen, he suggested that we take off animal inspector, animal welfare, and the emergency preparedness. That's why you do not see either of those on these charts. It was under that recommendation. When we met with the Emergency Preparedness Committee and we discussed with the fire chief the disbanding of the committee, we did also discuss that there would be some responsibilities that would still fall under the Board of Health, and the emergency dispensing site is one of those.
And that needs to be developed.
We actually have that all set. We had done drills, we had assemblies, then COVID came in and everything kind of got pushed wayside. And then when things started settling down, we met with Mr. Mullen again, said we need to get on board, we need to have a meeting. You have lots of new employees that need to understand they could potentially be needed at the site, which would be your accountant, possibly your treasurer. It would all depend on, there's a lot of moving parts that need to come together. But with this happening in the restructuring, it was decided that we needed to wait on all of that. And then we would sit down and start work on that after we get all this
I
figured.
could just make a comment on that. You have had a drill. I remember I participated.
A couple.
Yep.
Yeah, it was a responsibility. You had to do
Yeah, it
it
was before
yearly.
COVID, so it might have been 2019 was the
Right.
last one that we did.
And the board doesn't know, but we'll be part of it. We'll be telling you got COVID, go over there. You don't have COVID, go. That's our job, just to direct people. But we all have a role
Yes.
in that, and you've already planned for that. Obviously, when this is all resolved, you're going to look at it again and see what other possibilities and stuff like that that need to be. Yes, if I could just go back to the list that you gave us. I know you're not prepared to give, you weren't prepared to give us that list of concerns. I see some of them on all the like septic violations and concerns. That's on the septic trash bags. That's on the solid.
Solid waste, yep.
So
But that's different. The trash bags under solid waste is we buy 555 cases. Then we have to store them. We have to schedule deliveries. We have to work with the highway department. We have to keep track of the inventory. Then we take the payments when they come in and submit them to the treasurer. That's one part of it. The trash bags that I was talking about, the regular day-to-day, we sell them in the office in individual rolls. So there is a steady stream of people coming in that we are helping that way. So yes, it is solid waste, but it's a different component that it's in the office, and it does take a good deal of our time because we have that separate inventory as well as the main inventory.
yeah, no, when I saw solid waste and transfer station, I understood that was also. But I would want to see the list of things that are in addition to whatever's in all these three different duties that you have. For example, tanning, you mentioned tanning.
Yep. And at the moment, we don't have a tanning, but we did a couple of years ago.
Would
And
you want to see that on the chart with the red boxes, do you mean, or just a?
No, I don't want to repeat of whatever these boxes are. I want to repeat of all of these other duties that we did, because that's, to me, that's understood.
Oh, I get you.
Trash bags, I see it as transfer station and solid waste, septic violations or concerns.
Mhm.
It's on the septic. I do want to know those duties that we don't see reflected on any of these plans here. And you mentioned a few of those. So
Oh, okay.
when you finally come up with that list, I'd like to see that list of something that's not on these things over here. So that we all understand the responsibilities you have.
Okay.
Current structure. Any that you would really like to keep, and some that you would like to jettison.
Well, personally, septic is my strong suit. That's why I was hired. Effectively, the only reason I was hired is from my skills with soils and septic. Because when I first started here in 2017, that's what I was expected to do. The food service, that was also part of it at the time, and I enjoy that part of it too. So that's housing's just a pain, but I understand it goes with the Board of Health. But nobody likes doing housing. Ask anybody that does it, nobody likes it.
What does housing consist of?
Generally, it's rental units.
Yeah.
And the unit won't meet minimum housing standards. For example, there's a light switch is missing a plate, so there's bare wires exposed, and you have to make the landlord fix it, that kind of thing. So you're generally a mediator between the landlord and the tenant. Usually,
So why is that and not Jim
because it falls under the Board of Health.
for state regs? Okay.
Minimum standards for housing, yeah, minimum. I'm missing a word.
Stand.
Human habitation, minimum standards for human habitation.
And excuse me, Chairman, are you part of that group when Jim's thinking of condemning a house? Are you one of those members that go look at the house?
But condemning is a different thing than just going in and fixing some things that are not in compliance.
Condemning is some serious problem there.
So like, and then with housing also, like hoarding and hoarding issues are all interrelated a lot of times as well. So that also falls into it. I mean, So which opens up an emotional and behavioral health piece as well.
Which is part of the reason one of those other proposals we had involved bringing in a public health director. I don't have the training to deal with a lot. I don't have psychological training to be dealing with some of these people. And that was why one of the scenarios we had floated, put somebody above me that would handle all that end of it and leave me to do the inspectionary work. But obviously that was
But
meant hiring another body.
that's one option. I would think another option would be in your budgeting process to put a consultant in if you needed that, because it doesn't happen all the time.
No, it doesn't.
They could just, be called in. It's a possibility.
So what is your involvement with somebody is mentally ill? What is your involvement now? Contact us?
It's not the mentally ill, like, for example, a porter. Some may see it as trash, but a hoarder doesn't see it that way. So you have to get past that barrier to get them to agree to take that stuff and get rid of it. Because to them, it's a possession.
Yeah.
And that's
You're not trained in that.
I'm not trained in that. I mean, I may have a good personality that might be able to get somebody
Get carried away.
to do it, but
I know.
that's not training.
Yes, no, it's a serious thing.
Same
So
thing with the police and dealing with certain situations that you need psychological training for, and they may or may not have that training. I don't know, I'm not speaking for them. I'm just saying there's times when we all have something that is outside of our bailiwick.
Does Dayton belong to the Greater Taunton Attleboro Health Consortium? It was mostly health, public health, Bill Shea, CCBC, the Chenards, and others. Ring a bell at all? Okay.
One of the things,
We'll have a discussion about.
so one of the things, and I know over the last like 11 months, I've talked about it a lot, but this and it's actually reference in the blueprint for public health excellence, and it's also the blueprint actually led to the inception of the public health excellence grants that we are now one of 6 communities that are part of with Taunton, with Attleboro and with Attleboro, with Holbrook and Berkeley, and that has been that has been slow to roll out, but really there's a commitment of $300,000 a year for like at least the next 3 years to really help look towards health. Can help local health departments really fill in a lot of the gaps here with housing, with different types of environmental inspections, and a whole host of things. Unfortunately, the state hasn't actually rolled that out as quick as we would hope, because a lot of the need that we're talking about, it would it would help address, but so yeah, but every week or every other week, and Nicole and I, having part of this, and having part of the vision and we expect that grant to be implemented. Hopefully by the end of the year, and that will provide a resource to the degree. All that resource, we have, we have to see, but the state, based on the needs and the disparities between every local board of health there is in the Commonwealth. For the ARPA funding and otherwise has really been, have really been trying to address that issue.
Okay. No, thank you. Going back to the 90s, Bill Shea, who was the executive director of community counseling in Bristol County, had reached out to many of the area agencies like BAMSI, Fuller, to put together a resource that towns and cities could share. I was on the Greater Taunton. They had different subcommittees, and I was on the schools task force. So we worked on drug prevention. There was another group that worked on tobacco cessation. We used to share high school students to go in and try to buy tobacco. I want to see, I'll talk to Phil and see if any pieces of that still exist. So when you do have a problem, you have some people you can call and say, this is their expertise to bring them in. So,
Well, prior to June 30th, we had Kevin Bernardo, who was our housing and food inspector previously before he was on the board. So he was on the board. So if we had any questions or needed any advice, Kevin was our
And
go-to.
Matt
And
Tanis was there
Tanis,
too,
of
who was
course.
also a health agent for a lot of years. And so we had knowledge base on our board. And so we didn't need to reach outside generally.
okay,
Obviously, we're at a different place now. So
But great idea. So yes, it's.
I'll reach out.
Are there any other questions?
Right now.
Second item is discuss challenges facing the Board of Health. I have one. Departments. Stormwater. Does that take up a lot of your time?
So we've been tracking our time now for 8 weeks, give or take. Unfortunately, in the Board of Health, a lot of what we do goes through cycles, so you can't look at an 8-week period and extrapolate it across the year. For example, a lot of our permits, we knew at the end of the year, perk testing is usually busier in the summer than in the winter, that kind of thing. So you can't necessarily take it. But in the 8 weeks we've been tracking, stormwater is taking up about 20% of our time. Yeah, perk tests, it comes and goes. Like I'll have 1 week where I'll be out of the office for 20 hours and the next week I won't be out at all. So
And that,
you can't do one particular week. You got to look at like an overall.
and that's under the current situation with a moratorium currently in place.
Well, the moratorium is not on perk testing. It's only on water. So you can go in and perk your land now. It's just you couldn't get a building permit until your lot conforms. So a lot of people are doing that, knowing that the moratorium will eventually be lifted. But when you're in a drought, it's a good time to do a perk test, especially if you got high water tables.
What are your concerns?
There's not enough hours in the day.
I hear you. And I have something to add to that. During this discussion, I am hoping that I can get support from my brothers on the Board of Selectmen to take a look at the role of the office manager at the Board of Health and whether those responsibilities should be expanded and the title of office manager be replaced by some other title that accurately reflects those responsibilities and duties.
Well, that is one of the things on the chart here that we had administrative agent, which would effectively, in my vision, would allow, like if I went out and did an inspection at a restaurant and they were missing a couple thermometers, that she could go back and, or he, whoever the administrative agent is at this point in time, obviously it would be Roz, but and they could go back and do a follow-up inspection. If there's an inspection on a weekend, that if I'm not around, that person could. I know I have a backup to do certain inspections, but there's a lot of times when things just kind of need to happen right away and they can't wait until like a Monday to get done. So
Now you,
that was part of why I was looking for the office manager to also be and named agents so that they could do some of the inspections also.
you mentioned Mr. Bernardo and certain tasks that he did that are no longer, you have someone or it falls on you and you don't have enough time. Housing, septic. Any others that don't require, they might require a certificate, but don't require an additional degree or?
I mean, food inspections, Serve Safe is all that would require to do those. Yeah, septic, there's a lot of components of septic systems, the Title V inspections also, which that's a, I don't know how you want to describe the class for that. It's not overly complicated. It's not a long class. You don't need any college degrees or anything to do that. Yeah.
How about housing?
Housing is a lot more trainings. Mrs. Mello can speak on that because she's been doing a lot of the modules, but that only takes you to a certain point. But there's,
Yeah, and I haven't even got to what happens after I finish the modules.
So it's a lot of training.
It was it was online, and then I'm not sure if it continued, at the end, if it continues that I test online or if there's some kind of in-field stuff. I haven't got that far yet.
yeah, so I believe at the end of all those trainings, you have to follow an inspector around for I don't know how long and do so many inspections with them, then do so many of your own with them with you. And then you do your own after that. So it takes a while.
You use the term administrative agent.
That was,
Do you have any job descriptions from other towns that have administrative agent?
That administrative agent was recommended by Matt Tanis, was one of the towns that he had previously worked in. That was a job title.
Mr. Tannis could probably provide to you a job description
at least tell us the town that he got it from. Yeah.
that we could have a reference point.
So how he explained it was that there were office duties and there were also field duties that were included in that. So that the position was responsible for field work, depending on what was in the job description, and also certain office.
I'm curious to see that.
I'll see if I can.
As a point of reference.
And see what additional training may have to be done.
Right.
There may have to be some additional training.
Well, there
A lot of-
definitely would have to be additional training.
But a lot of the trainings, the board suggested, as soon as the Board of Health and Board of Selectmen split, the board members recommended the online trainings, and they just asked me in my free time, when you have time, I want you to start doing these trainings. So over the last 4 years, I have been doing them. I'm at the same point as Ms. Mello here, that done the housing as far as we can go without the final leg of that training. And there's actually quite a few trainings that I had done in emergency prep, and a couple with actually the regulations for the Board of Health. So just again, in my free time, I've been doing them. So I do have a few of them that have already started.
Mr. Karen?
Where did this fall in under the wage study that was just done?
You have to ask.
So, like in the wage study, the wage study looked at the current responsibilities and the current credentials of the office manager. And based again on the blueprint and the blueprint for public health, and also the matrix that was provided, but also that was included in the blueprint with the credentials for with the desired or recommended credentials for clerical staff, office manager, and then like inspector and sanitarians. There was a without really without really inspecting credentials, the wage and classification study recommended that the grade of the office manager be the same. But if there were credentials added or required, then those requirements would be something we could visit during upcoming bargaining with the union.
And shouldn't it be, we wait until after the reorganization is complete before we decide if there's going to be a department, administrative agent?
Oh, no,
Well,
because she's the key to it. If that position can help out the inspector, then he can do more work. Otherwise, he's loaded down heavily. But if I shouldn't say she, that position can do these extra inspections, that will take some of the responsibilities off him. She can be a backup to him. And that's the whole key to this thing. You can't say what he's responsible for if you don't know if he has a backup.
But if he's doing it all now, and we're going to take some things off of his plate, why won't that free up his time that he wouldn't need a backup?
He's overwhelmed now. He can't
We're
even,
going to talk about, we're talking
That's right.
taking things off of his
Right.
plate.
that's
So
right. But he's,
If he's at 40 hours and just barely getting everything done, and we take 10 hours away from that, not really taking 10 hours, but we take out 10 hours of responsibility, why does he need an assistant at that point?
well, what are you taking away from him?
Well, I mean, you've even made recommendations of taking solid waste in the transfer station away. So that's time he's spending doing.
That's recommendations. That's recommendations. Now, if they stay,
Well, that's, they say, and that's what I said.
if we don't have it, if the Board of Health doesn't have that, then somebody else has to have it, and you have to pay somebody else to add people at that other end. If we don't do the transfer station and that goes to the highway department, he's going to need help, extra help.
Right, so that's something totally separate. What I'm saying is, if we're going to take responsibilities away, then why is there the need for another person?
There may not be.
Right, that's
So
what
we're having this
thinking.
discussion,
Mhm.
what is going to stay in the structure and what isn't.
If it goes to the highway department and he needs 10 hours, then that's something completely different.
That's right, yeah. So you have to decide and help us out here.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Shouldn't we wait until after we have reorganized the Board of Health before we determine if there's going to be a assistant health agent or whatever you want to call him?
It all has to go together. It definitely does have
Right.
to go together. But we're presenting what that position would do to alleviate him being overburdened.
If everything stays status quo,
Mhm.
but it's probably not going to stay status quo.
Well, it hasn't, yeah,
We're
probably.
hoping it doesn't.
Yeah, we're hoping it doesn't.
So I have a question for Mike Mullen then. Can we change her title to administrative assistant before
No,
negotiation?
so I mean, really, I mean, we can't have, so. Part of what I want to avoid here is having this ongoing conversation about what comes first, the chicken or the egg. We fell into that before, so like, I mean, it just really like extended this whole thing. We have an upcoming union process. Like that. It's gonna take time. And I don't want to create any sort of even expectations about how long that process is even going to take in the first place. So to try to hold something up or to, really make things contingent. Like at this point, I will rely on something that I think is going to be like a pretty expensive process. I really don't fear. I don't think it's fair to why we're here and how we got here in the first place. I would, really like to clean things up. And again, you mentioned, have what we've decided together, help to inform how we go forward with other things up to including union negotiations.
So if we adopted option 2, we could change administrative agents. It's or keep it as office manager and then decide during negotiations whether we feel it's appropriate to.
So yeah, to that point, I mean, I don't really think you can adopt this as written because of that.
But if we change it to office manager, could adopt it, and then down the road, I'm assuming that I'm going to be part of the critical negotiations. I did it the last time. I'm going to ask if I can do it again, but I still want to be part of those negotiations. So we can, do you feel comfortable? If, I'm not saying the board's prepared to vote on option 1, option 2, but if we went with option 2 or option 1, if we change administrative agent to office manager at this time, with the understanding that we're going to have negotiations, the contract, and we can dig in further as to what administrative agent, I don't want to waste our time here either, but with the administrative, doing negotiations, actually duties that that person would be doing, and then address wages and that kind of stuff also.
The only concern I have with option 2, I see nothing in it regards to solid waste in the transfer station. And before we decide to give it to someone else, I think we need to bring the head of the highway department in to see if he wants or if he can handle it.
Just like emergency prep, you need to speak with the fire chief on.
Right,
For animal inspector, you have to talk to the police chief.
right.
Yes.
So I'm not in a hurry. Solid waste in the transfer station, the highway department. Simply because I know he has some manpower issues already. And he lost 2 of his men to building projects.
Oh.
Which we're almost done with the town hall, but we also have 2 libraries that,
Always another building project, yes.
2 more building projects. I don't see those 2 guys coming back anytime soon.
Could we give those duties to the Board of Health?
Yeah, thanks.
So. I also want to hear from the superintendent, the highway department.
Yes.
I'm leaning towards it, but I clearly we need to get his input on.
Mhm. Any further questions? Before I get into the proposed changes to the health agent job description, are there any opportunities to strengthen any of the items listed, public health functions, role of the nurse, stormwater, food services, septic, housing, solid waste, or the transfer station? Is there, I mean, we obviously have the public health and excellence grant opportunities. But are there any other agencies that, area agencies that we could partner with to help
I will
the
say,
job easier? I mentioned that Greater Taunton, and I'll reach out to Phil about where that's at, if it still exists.
I will say over the last few years, we've made some strides to bolster our department. We didn't have an assistant agent, a backup agent, if you will. For me, so I was the only one. Jim was doing some of the inspections as needed, but we have now got it in the budget, and we now have hired Matt Tanis as my backup for 15 inspections a year or something like that. I forget how many it is. It's not that many. So that's when I'm not available. Again, a perk test, I won't schedule that for a week. I know I'm going to be on vacation. So we're talking a septic inspection or a food inspection, that kind of thing. Perhaps a housing inspection. We've also, and it was only as a result of COVID that we added more money into the nurse budget line that was never there before. We now have a nurse who's available to us far more readily than the previous nurse. So that's helped quite a bit. And trying to think I think there was another way. I will say, as far as like stormwater goes, most boards of health don't deal with stormwater.
That's gonna be one of my questions. Why do you guys have stormwater?
Because it's in the bylaw that way. So most board of health don't have stormwater, so there's not a lot of support for stormwater. Most towns, it's through their DPW perhaps, or the conservation or whatever, planning. A lot of them hire outside consultants to do their paperwork for them. That's usually how they bolster their stormwater efforts as a town. Food, you get into things like food or housing and even septic. That's when a lot of towns will have, especially in the bigger towns with a lot of restaurants, they'll hire somebody just to do the food inspection as an outside consultant. we don't have that many restaurants in town that we don't see the need for that, but my backup agent could definitely do some of that. But we have some of the retail stores and stuff, some of it is, we'll call it on the low end scale. You go to a town with 100 restaurants, obviously it's a different ballgame. But
One of the things that I haven't heard at any of the meetings in regards to stormwater is 53G. Is that an option?
so 53G is an option, and that is one of the other things we've done over the last few years. That's when I first got here. The Planning Board and Conservation Commission, somebody files a subdivision, I'm just saying a subdivision. And it has to be filed with the Conservation and Planning Board. They both hired a 53G consultant to review it for them. Sometimes it was different consultants, sometimes it was the same one. But nobody ever put in their contracts that they were reviewing it for compliance with Mass DEP stormwater management. So they were only reviewing it for compliance with the Dayton Planning Board regulations or the conservation bylaws. The projects were never being reviewed for stormwater. So when I got here, I started reviewing them for stormwater. What has happened since then, these years, is they've now changed what the 53G is reviewing for. So they are reviewing for compliance with stormwater management now. If you file a subdivision today, it's being reviewed by those 53G consultants. However, there's still site inspections that need to be done when you get complaints from neighbors about dust from a solar facility, that kind of thing. There's test pits that need to be done to make sure drainage basins are out of water table and stuff. And right now, again, that's on me. Could we send a lot of that stuff out for review? Possibly. But, do we want to? How much do you want to send out for review? The 53G on the drainage is the most cumbersome part and the most time involved. But if somebody's got to go do a dust inspection and they got to go 4 times a week out to a solar place, the amount of money they're going to be spending on outside consultants is astounding. And right now we collect fees under the stormwater permit that accounts for doing these inspections. So if we give it all to 53G, we would have to give up all the fees too. So you lose revenue and you lose expenses. Like they both drop at the same time, I guess is what I personally would rather keep control of these sites. I mean, we have one that they came in today to meet with us, and the guy who's going to be doing the installing basically said, I'm trying to leave names out of it. The big bosses were like, Dayton's just a hick town. Don't worry about it. Just going into what you got to do. And when he sat down with me, he goes, you guys know a lot more than what they think our bosses think,
Taunton said the same thing.
So what do you want? What do you expect? And, it's to me, it's nice having that control in-house as opposed to just relying on somebody else to do all your inspections for you.
And knowing Taunton's situation very well, that's a credit to you.
Thank you. But that's just it. They have an engineering department that reviews the plans, but when you're overworked, you don't necessarily, but again, with the 53G supplementing what I'm doing, I think it works fine. It's just, again, just the amount of hours that you want to spend on it and how far behind you fall on everything else that you're spending time on. But again, perk tests, if I'm on perk tests for 20 hours a week, everything else falls behind while I'm doing perk tests. Or housing. If I got to go do one housing complaint, there's half my week is gone. So.
Should we have separate meetings or allocate an hour or definitely a half hour and have Nancy come in a particular meeting and Tom come in so that we can have specific discussions about the the transfer station, solid waste and.
Mr. Ferry could also be involved in the stormwater discussion because then stormwater budget is under his department.
So in one of these things, like in fairness, in fairness to Todd as well, so in Todd with, the Taunton project that was referenced, like in other projects, we as a town have to be fair to him with regards to expectations as well. He, based on his expertise, his reputation and credentials, there are some times that he has acted as an engineer, like as a health agent slash, as a health agent slash agent. And I think to be fair to Todd, through this process, we really have to really decide together, what we expect that expectation to be. Oh, do we, so, and I mean, so yeah, so I mean, frankly speaking, do we want, so our health agent to operate as an engineer? Knowing that's a real value added. So like, or do we want to, so do we want to find a balance where we so where we 53G some things out and have other things, you're done in house. I mean, but I think incumbent on all of us through this process, we have to really define how we expect and what we want that to be. So because there's been a lot of, I think everyone would agree, a lot of gray area there. That creates a lot of room, frankly, for everything. And I think really, like, in fairness at the time, we have to, really, have like an open conversation about, so what really we want, because when we went to town meetings, especially town meeting last year, we were clearly talking about health agent. So in having the health agent work 35 hours with an increase in pay. So, but I mean, to be fair, we really didn't talk about the engineering component. So like really, so at the same time, we were at least, somewhat anticipating if that's the right word that would happen. And I think, so yeah, like we all owe it, to the process to define really how that happens. So what happens there?
And I will say, I don't think Dayton is ready for a town engineer or town planner. I don't think there's a need for that position. Right, well, never mind affording it. I don't think they're ready for it based on the volume of work that comes through the town.
And the cost.
Right. Like I said, we're fortunate to have Todd, but we also have to plan for a day that Todd's not going to be here.
Well, that's part of the reason why the Board of Health, even when we did this job description, was to separate the stormwater agent from the health agent position. Because you may or may not be able to replace the health agent who can do the stormwater agent job or vice versa. So that was why we wanted it separate at the time, but it was included as part of the job description, but it makes it a little blurry.
Now, the stormwater agent should be an engineer, correct?
It would probably be better for the town if it was, yes. Not every town has an engineer as their stormwater agent. But if you walk into a meeting as a professional engineer and there's somebody sitting on the board who's just worked for an engineering company for 20 years, you need credentials if you're going to try and have an argument. Same thing with lawyers, if you're non-lawyer arguing with a lawyer or non-doctor arguing with a doctor, just because you work in a doctor's office doesn't make you a doctor. So.
Now, it doesn't have to be a PE, correct?
Well, professional engineer would be the PE. I mean, if you're going to.
Oh, I understand that, but there's engineer and then there's engineer PE, correct?
Well, there's engineer in training and then there's professional engineer. And there's different types of engineer. There's mechanical, electrical, chemical, transportation, and then sanitary. But civil means you can do all the ones below. So if you're a transportation engineer, all you can do is transportation. But a civil engineer, which is what I am, I can do bridges and transportation and drainage and septic and structural and whatever else. I don't do certain things because to me, I'm not strong enough in them to do them. I could, but I choose not to do anything chemical related because I just don't have enough. I don't feel comfortable doing it.
Are there any other questions? With that being said, could we add proposed changes to the health agent job description?
Can I just make one note on the food service? There are quite a few inspections on the weekend. Because of all the different functions, like the cow chip festival and different functions where they're cooking out there, that they do have to go inspect on the weekends too.
And that requires a serve safe. Something we could potentially look at if we go with a administrative agent.
Yeah, and it's quite a few of them.
Yeah, I'm trying to, before COVID, because obviously you can't use like today, I feel like, in the year 2019, I think I did something like 28 inspections for food on Fridays, Saturdays and Sundays.
Yeah, it's usually
So it's a reasonable number.
events.
Yes, the craft fairs,
And the pavilion is getting more and more popular out here, getting more and more functions just out here.
But if we had a situation where the administrative agent could take some of the load off of
Right,
if, say, something came up with stormwater and he was really tied up with stormwater, you'd have someone you could hand off that work to.
mm-hmm,
Whereas in the past, you had Mr. Tannis and
mm-hmm.
you don't have.
we didn't have them in the past. That only just started in March or April.
Okay,
Yeah, I'd say, because it took a few years for us to be able to get it in the budget. And then once we got it in the budget,
Right.
finding somebody took another year. So
so that. I mean, that would be a part.
Mm-hmm.
Have you all had an opportunity to look over these job descriptions?
well, I wrote it, so yes.
Oh, okay. Okay. Now, in writing these, you review them with Mr. Mullen,
No.
not ahead of time?
No, but yeah, anything in black you see is what came from the job description that was written in 2019 by the town administrator, Mallory Aaronstein. So anything in red is what I added or changed, I guess.
Okay.
With some of these in the job description, some of the duties would be eliminated if we accepted one of these. So I'm not sure if maybe we want to resolve this first. I know we can't do it tonight, but it's almost like we got to pick the option that the board wants or prefers. Then we can go over the job description, because it involves a transfer station, trash bags and stuff that they or he won't be responsible for.
This is how all this started, is when we went to do a contract for me and said, well, let's do a job description, but figure out what you want me to do before I can write a job description. So again, the egg and the chicken here. So.
Yeah, no, I'm not being critical of you at all.
No, I understand, but it's a matter, you're right.
Some things that may be taken out of this job.
Or added to it.
Taken,
Right.
except for one of these options here.
Absolutely.
And they could also be created a third option. Option 2 doesn't include solid waste and transfer station. Added.
Right,
2,
Then it becomes
or we
option.
could take something away from.
right, or split and do solid waste stays and transfer station goes, right? You can do anything you want. I'd say that's why we need to have these conversations.
Stormwater too. And that's certainly on the table. I don't know if some of the others, as I look, opioids isn't going epidemiology.
So you had asked earlier how we've been bolstering the department, and obviously with Mrs. Mello as our nurse, we've been able to push opioid defense more. We've always been part of a group, but I was never able to attend any of the meetings. And obviously, she's able to go to that, which we couldn't do before. That's been very helpful and adds another item on the list of things that we handle as public health.
Housing. It's traditionally handled by Board of Health. And is it covered by statute?
Yeah, the minimum housing standards are on the Department of Public Health. Yes.
And septic is as well,
Yes, Title V, yes.
and of course, Board of Food Services. So there. All of the positions that I see in option 1 and 2, with the exception of solid waste and the transfer station, are governed by statute and are directed towards the Board of Health, right?
And stormwater is not included in statute. So under the Board of Health. So that is there again, as the board mentioned, through our local Dayton bylaw.
So basically, when you look at that option 2 and you go straight down with the health agent and then office manager and then the food, septic and housing, That was pretty much what it was when I started here in 2017 is kind of what it was. And we've been expanding and jobs have been added to us and we just keep taking on more programs. Like, for example, pink bags. It was never existed and we started a new program. We've expanded. The opioid stuff is something that was never under the Board of Health, so we're growing. We didn't exist 5 years ago and
our town's better for
and there's a need for services, whether it's provided by the Board of Health or the town Selectmen's office. I think Karen would love to sell trash bags again.
it. From the office, yeah.
So one of the things that I want to mention as well, like, I mean, it makes sense really to create like an organizational structure here, but I mean, so like, as was mentioned earlier, there are so many things, so many responsibilities, like actually, like a local Board of Health anticipated in chapter 111. So that just, so just hypothetically speaking, just because housing, like is like fun and, like in forefront today. So yeah, it doesn't mean housing is gonna be forefront to, in a month from now. The same thing with opioids as well, like opioids is also. So like, opioids, substance use behavior health is also included in chapter 111. So, but all of these, but all the responsibilities that like are contemplated in chapter 111. So really ebb and flow. So yeah, like I mean, there are a whole host of other things. That chapter 111 actually contemplates like pool inspections and things like that. But just because they're not there today doesn't mean they won't be there tomorrow either.
Yeah, but they are there. We have a couple semi-public pools in town. So we do that. They just-
Yeah, but that's
I don't know
not.
about this, but you're right. It is included in 111, but it's not on that chart that you've seen, which is a
Yes, exactly.
reference to earlier.
And I know, having talked to Mr. Aguirre, his plate's pretty full too, so he's not looking to take on any duties with housing. So,
Well, and even if he was, you still need more than one body and to handle it or a backup or something but I understand the public health excellence should bring us help in housing if we have those issues. But I don't want to say it's not that it's not reliable, but it's a matter of you still need somebody to be the contact person in town in order to, and that person needs to know what's going on. Which is why Mrs. Grassi did some of those trainings in housing. So when people called, she knew the right questions to ask and get the right information and get us the right access to get into properties. Because you can't just walk in and go, I'm the Board of Health, let me in. That doesn't work like that, So
Rosalind, you are trained in the housing
some of it, just like Mrs. Mello.
also?
Some of it, yes. We've had the hoarding training, mold, bed bugs, all the fun stuff.
Mrs.
Any-
Can't wait to go doing it.
Don't have anything.
Our next meeting. I understand someone from the state is coming, Mr. Mullen.
Yeah, actually from the Mass Association of Health Boards, Michael Hugo, who's again, Michelle Sabara, the executive director of the association, who actually Cheryl helped essentially write this blueprint. And it really, all this is her expertise, and she has like a good pulse of what's happening. I think most of the 351 are community, so it should be pretty instructive and helpful.
How long of a presentation were they planning?
So, I think they're gonna really help us, I believe, and I can touch base with them in advance, but help us work through a lot of these options and frankly, help us really evaluate the type of things that, should really might be able to be here and the ones that, maybe unpractical under a Board of Health and help us really evaluate. If everyone wants, I can kind of help them kick off, with a presentation relating to what actually they're seeing other local communities and Board of Health really doing. Because I mean, again, but as this blueprint mentioned, So, I mean, the challenges that we're dealing with right here today, like, they're not unique in all ours. So like, I mean, like, every board of health, every city and town are trying to reconcile the very same things. So like, I mean, especially after COVID as well. So like, we all pre-COVID had an expectation as to what the board of health was. So in here in Dayton, it was more environmental. So it was more environmental and so like a land use perk test, your Title V issues. And now, so based on what we've been through, there is more of a public health focus that, so yeah, where there always really should have been. So like, we just have to figure out, I think, so all of us, how we reconcile all those things with our funding limitations, with our resource limitations, and so it can really maximize our workflow as well. And
Just,
so, I mean, I'm optimistic that we're gonna be able to do that.
looking forward to hearing from them. Does the Board of Health have a copy of that, Mr. Mullen book?
What are we referring to?
The DPH blueprint from 2019.
No, I don't. I was gonna ask about that.
Could we get copies?
Absolutely.
And on the same token, would the Board of Health be okay if we shared the 3 structural options with Mass Association of Health, so they can have them?
I believe they were already sent them for the last meeting. I believe they already have these.
Oh, they do?
Yeah, like we wanted them, to really be prepared to help us address these issues. So.
The Mullen Public Health Excellence Grant.
Yep.
Any timeline when they're going to get going?
I know I sound like a broken record on this.
I think it would, do you mind, Mike?
Yeah. No.
I think it would be hard to give a timeline at this point. Things have been moving kind of slow right now. We've got a job description out for grant coordinator. That's been going on for at least the process of that several months now. So it is now, was waiting for approval. I think I saw it on Indeed or somewhere. So I think it's now out in the public. North Attleboro had some kind of thing where they had to give it to certain places before they could give it out into the public. So that we were waiting for that. So now we're gonna have to wait on hiring. And I don't know if we wait for somebody to be hired for that, or do we continue to go with North Attleboro's been kind of leading it and doing some of the things, if we can continue to go that way. We do have Mike Hugo comes to the meetings. He kind of gives us guidance. He's helped other towns and communities do this. But it's slow moving. I think once we get in a coordinator, maybe it will go faster depending on their experience. And even once it does get going, it's not unreliable, but it is shared services within these towns. So we can't always rely that what we need will be accessible to us, depending on how much we can.
How long is the grant for?
At least the next 3 years, 2.5 years. But there's a very good possibility that it's going to be for longer than that as well. So it can be a good thing is even hypothetically, God forbid, it's only good for the next 2.5 years. It's really going to show us. Frankly, exactly what we're missing, exactly what type of resources that then to the grant that received, that we really have a need to better fill the gap as well. So, I mean, like either way, I mean, I don't want to be doom and gloom, but I mean, God forbid it is only 2.5 years, at least it's going to provide us. So as long as it actually gets off the ground, so it's really going to provide us some helpful information as such as what our real needs are.
Yeah, after we can utilize their services, we'll see what we utilize the most, and then we'll have leg to stand on to present, hey, we've used this. Maybe we could have this within the town.
Are there any other questions?
I have no other questions.
Not right now. I mean, I have other questions, but not pertaining to this.
Board of Health, any further questions at this time or concerns?
I have a concern.
Okay,
Okay, I'm gonna read it because I get tongue tied. As you know, we need to fill the vacant Board of Health seat. The interview team interviews applicants and then recommends to Board of Selectmen our preference for applicant to fill this position. Therefore, I propose the interview team be composed of Board of Health members solely because They have the experience in knowing what is needed, qualifications needed, and the person that will work with our team to find the person to fill this seat.
Mr. Pacheco?
I don't agree with that. Obviously, you're going to participate in the interviewing process.
Yes.
So what's
Yes.
wrong with a town administrator, participating and asking questions? I'm not sure who else was part of that team.
Mr.
Mr. Karen?
We voted.
Yeah, no, I don't remember, but that's okay. That's fine. I would like it to stay the same. Yeah, obviously, you guys are going to be part of the interview.
No, it was just the three of us,
Oh, okay.
which I find I would rather include at least Todd. And also Ms. Mello would like to be included because we have to work with this person. We're going, I mean, we interview and also then we propose it to you. So I don't know why. I don't know what other,
Do you not have the confidence to say that you can fully represent the Board of Health?
I'm sorry?
Do you not have the confidence that you can fully represent the Board of Health with the three of us there?
There is.
No, I'd rather definitely have Mr. Pilling there, definitely have Mr. Pilling. And also Mrs. Mello has asked to be included.
There is also another option. Have a public meeting,
Mm-hmm,
do the interviews in public,
mm-hmm.
and the Board of Health can be there. The Board of Selectmen could also.
Mm-hmm. It hasn't always been like that. I know when I was interviewed, when Nicole was interviewed, it was,
I know, but we can work together on this. And one way to do it would be you represent the Board of Health, you can convince, go off to the side and talk to the other members and come back to vote as we can ourselves. And we'll probably have a better chance of coming up with a candidate that when the final vote is taken, which rests in the hands of the Board of Selectmen, is something that we all agree going into that meeting. Keeping in mind that the Board of Selectmen has the final vote on that position.
definitely.
I try not to get into those situations where the Board of Selectmen goes a different direction than the recommendation, but it is allowed. So if you're concerned about, we can do it publicly. The audience can hear the interviews, the voters can hear the interview, and then you can go to.
Is that done with all interviews on all boards? All positions in this town? Open meetings for an interview?
Yes, it's, it is required by law. Yes,
We've done it,
Open meeting?
yes.
did a school committee position. There's one other one we did as a public.
Offhand, I don't. So is it possible? So why weren't they done if it has to be an open meeting? Why wasn't it done in the past then?
So it was, the prior, it was actually done in two ways. The Board of Health actually asked me to join. So like a subcommittee of the Board of Health asked me to join them. Because there wasn't like an interview, and because it wasn't like an interview committee actually voted to be actually approved. That was actually possible that because there was no formal committee ever created. They didn't actually have to have an open meeting because it wasn't a quorum of the Board of Health. So that was one time. There was another time. To consider interviews. The board went into executive session. That also became subject of an open meeting law complaint.
So if it was just Mr. Karen, you and Ms. Catavia, would it have to be an open?
Yeah, because at the meeting of Like I think the last meeting, oh my God, like I think the 14th, where the resignation was announced and it was, so like, and it was discussed. You know, to have us, like we can as a member. Like of the interview panel, the board voted on that. So by virtue of the board vote, that means the interviews, when they would happen, they would have to be public. So I mean, to the Board of Health Chair's point, that meeting will be an open meeting regardless. So and frankly, if the Board of Health wanted, you know, to post a meeting for the very same time, so both Board of Health members could be so able to attend and participate. You know, I mean, I really honestly don't see an issue with that. Honestly, I think so it could help streamline the process as well.
I have confidence in Mr. Karen and you and Barbara making the decision. They can participate. I don't necessarily want to micromanage what they're doing. I'm going to have faith in Mr. Karen. I don't need to sit through the whole interview, and I'll listen to what the recommendation and Mrs. Gadavy can consult clearly with a board member as health agent.
So I mean, one of the things, just really practically speaking, you know, like, and this is no offense to the health agents as well, but the Board of Health member is we'll collectively become, you know, like a third of the health agent's employer. And just like I don't have a role, so I shouldn't be getting involved in an election. You know, with the selectmen. I mean, I professionally don't think the health agent should, you know, really have a say in determining who his next employer is.
I'm on the board. Basically, because I am a Title V inspector, I install. So I know what's going on.
Yeah, I'm not arguing.
The same with Mrs. Mellon. One of the main reasons is because she is a nurse and we wanted that, and she was very, very good besides that. Interviewing. I think it only beneficial that the inspectors there to ask these applicants their knowledge. I mean, in voting, that's something different. But when you're choosing someone that's sitting on a board, you want them to know what you're talking about. You want them to be knowledgeable about what you have to do. You don't want somebody on there that's, oh, I'm not going to use any profession, but you want them to be very knowledgeable. That's why, you know, the previous person that we had come on, she was very knowledgeable, and we're sorry to say that she had problems and she just had to leave. And we want another person on there that works with Mrs. Mello, myself, and can benefit the Board of Health going forward in the new direction.
Absolutely.
Not the new direction, the better direction all the time. That's why I specifically would like both of them to be on or in the meeting. That's fine with me, but definitely.
Yeah, I'm not opposed to you two.
I'm sorry.
Not opposed to you two necessarily having a vote on this, but I don't think the agent should have, he can participate. If it's going to be a public meeting, he can ask all the questions, assuming that you allow people to ask questions as well as the chairman have.
I don't mind that at all. I don't know how the interviewees would like that, but that's fine. I don't mind it being open. But I just feel the knowledge of both of them is incomparable. We really need that input.
No.
Because when we interview, there are questions I wouldn't think of, you wouldn't think of, he wouldn't think of, they might. And we need that. We need that to have a good, solid Board of Health that works together. We don't want anybody saying, no, I don't like that, or, you know, we have to have a clear mind. We want to go in this direction together.
Well, I'm here to communicate with the Board of Selectmen.
Mhm.
So as far as the questions to ask, I'm not saying it's more of an observatory position. Certainly I'll ask questions, but I have to be able to communicate to the other two members exactly what's going on.
Exactly.
So I think, plus we voted on it. I think to change it now, especially with having an open meeting, I don't think it's necessary.
Okay, no, that's fine. We have an open meeting then. I just didn't want to
Sure.
close. I needed
You needed.
their input. I really wanted their input because they're all very knowledgeable. I mean, we all work together down here. You know that. We all work together and try to help one another out.
I just want to clarify that the interview process will be separate from the Board of Selectmen selection process, and that this subcommittee is making a recommendation of the board, making a recommendation to the Board of Selectmen. How the Board of Health representative on that subcommittee makes her decision, I believe, since they're all female.
That has nothing to do with that.
That to the determination of who we want to vote for, that is up to you.
Okay.
How you do it. You can do that yourself, or you can request the assistance of your colleagues and Todd. On the Board of Selectmen, I feel we have the same right on opportunity. I myself want to be at that meeting. It doesn't look like a joint meeting, and the public will expect a decision that night.
Right.
So I won't be present for that
Right.
subcommittee meeting.
Yeah.
We will discuss it. You will come back with your recommendation. And I don't know, it's an open meeting, so Chico can go, but I just feel that, one, it's important to deliberate. But it's also important to give the perception to the public that it is two separate processes. And that what that subcommittee is doing is a recommendation. And what the Board of Selectmen will be doing is the actual hiring of selection.
Very good. So I guess we have that figured out.
So I don't plan on attending, but I probably will watch on YouTube.
Oh, come on.
Well, it's a perception, you know, I mean,
I know.
I want it to look like we're micromanaging the Board of Health.
Right. exactly.
I don't attend a lot of other meetings unless I'm the liaison person. Other than that, I'll watch on YouTube if I have.
I feel the same way as Mr. Chico.
Great. Okay, we have that solved.
That works.
Thank you, gentlemen and ladies.
And if the Board of Health chooses to have Mr. Pilling there, that's your choice.
Very good. Thank you.
Does we have any further questions?
Schedule, do we know when our next meeting is?
Oh, it's the 17th.
October 17th.
We're all in agreement on that?
Yeah, just like it's on ballpark works for everybody, correct?
What day is it on?
17.
Monday.
Monday too.
Okay.
Fine with me. Can I ask you a question that it's not off track, but who do you think the stormwater should answer to?
In general terms,
In general terms, I mean, we don't think,
yeah. Most towns, it's managed by the Department of Public Works.
okay,
Because the highway department is responsible for cleaning all the catch basins and basically managing stormwater cleaning, the drainage basins, all that kind of stuff.
which he has done by a third party.
Well, right now, that was only recent, but again, still kind of managed through the DPW. But when you fill in your annual reporting, you need conservation input, planning board input, because you need planning board regulations that dovetail in with the stormwater. And so it's kind of that, which is why we have a stormwater committee in Dayton, which works very well because we have everybody's involvement at one table. So honestly, I've seen it sometimes where the town administrator is the one that does the annual reporting, whatever. So it could go either way, but generally it's with the DPWs.
Okay.
And again, knowing my background, having it in the Board of Health works. And I'm,
But it works now. And I think we have an obligation to say, again, if you're not here or you're no longer with us, the job description has to be that anybody can walk in with the necessary qualifications to do the job. Something similar to the animal control officer. Right now, she can do dual jobs, but somebody else coming in might not be able to.
Right.
So,
yes, which is why we wanted to split the job description.
well, I noticed that in both options, it was staying under the board member's control, in the department head's control. And it's something that I would consider personally that maybe it shouldn't be part of the Board of Health.
And I'm not disagreeing with that statement, but if you have a separate position for a stormwater agent, you could just take that whole job description and move it over to the planning board or conservation or DPW, or wherever you want to move it and separate the two. Yes. But right now you can't. The Board of Health agent is the stormwater agent.
Right.
But it's under our bylaws, the stormwater stays here. So the bylaws would have to change, but that's why
I thought it wasn't under the Bible.
it's under the Dayton bylaw that it's under.
It is.
Yeah, it's not under the state law, it's under our town.
Town bylaw.
Laws.
Okay.
So the other thing we could even, we've always called that person the agent. So the agent, the term agent is not also included in, in the bylaw either, because what the bylaw does, as it gives responsibility of, like the implementation and enforcement of the bylaw to the Board of Health.
Yeah.
So in the Board of Health, at least since Todd was hired. Really, has rightfully relied on him. So on a lot of the day-to-day stormwater management responsibilities. So, but other towns, they have stormwater coordinators and so forth. There is a whole range of options about, so how other cities and towns handle those responsibilities too.
I believe that when this was, stormwater was created, and Nancy played a major role in that she involved Todd because he had the engineering degree. I know in Taunton, the DPW director is the head of stormwater, but has an engineer. So a lot of stormwater, even though it's under Mr. Cornelius' domain, ends up going to the town engineer. And I think Nancy did the same thing. Because, Todd was an engineer and they could use his services.
So the bylaw, just really to be clear, the bylaw was adopted in 2009. And Todd didn't come till.
Yeah, it was 8 and then it was revised in 9. Yep.
Okay, so when Todd wasn't hired till 2017. Yeah. So there was a period of 9 years.
So who did it during those?
So from what I understand, there was only 1 or 2 permits that were actually issued in that time span. Because there was nobody following up on it. I think one of them was at the school or something. So it was not as active without Mrs. Goulart at the helm. It was not as active of a thing. Obviously, she put the committee together and all that, as opposed to just the Board of Health, which was the Board of Selectmen at the time. So take your workload and add stormwater to it. And you can understand why it was the same as we're doing right now with some of the work we're doing, which just, I don't have time to deal with it. So it's just going to sit in the corner until I can. And when they split, it went with the,
Well, obviously can't continue the way it is. And I certainly appreciate your input. I guess I was naive to how much you guys actually get accomplished in that office and agree that something should change. I just don't know what that changes should be.
You think you were naive, you should have seen mine. It's like just one meeting a month, that's all.
Yep.
Wow.
well, if we told you what it really was, would you?
No, no, I probably wouldn't have actually. That's all right. You guys gave me a good light through.
Can we just talk about housing again for a second? And I don't want to be a dead horse. Is it? We don't have public housing here. So it's anybody's home that going to with the necessary permission?
You want to answer?
I don't know a lot about it, but it's complaints and it would be things like, I mean, like Todd said, electrical, if someone has a complaint, what is it mostly? I would think it's more tenants and
A lot of
because
times.
nobody's gonna
wellness
complain
checks.
on themselves.
Sometimes
Wellness checks,
wellness check.
calls, we haven't seen so-and-so, they haven't come out of their house.
Or home health aide will go there and come out and go, they don't have any hot water in the house, so,
Okay.
you know, so it's usually something like that, but most of the time, it's an apartment that somebody's renting. That the tenant's not happy about something. And that's usually when we get the call.
How would they know to call the Board of Health?
Oh, they all,
Wouldn't they think it's the
A
building?
lot of time it's the police go in and for a domestic call or whatever, and they look around and they see something that they don't think. Then they call and talk to Todd, like, I think you need to come out here. So there's protocols for that to happen. A lot of times they call the building department and then the building department calls in the Board of Health. But normally it's another department. There's something going on that doesn't seem right that calls.
Okay.
but generally with apartments, pretty much anybody who's a tenant knows that the Board of Health is the one that's responsible for the minimum standards.
Right.
Yeah, tenants know their rights.
Yes, they do.
Oh, I'm sure. It just, to me, why is that a Board of Health issue and not just a building inspector issue? I mean, I can see why if somebody doesn't have hot water or heat, well, not necessarily hot water, but if somebody doesn't have heat, there's a health issue involved. But who and when was it determined that it should be under the jurisdiction of the Board of Health and not just the building inspector to say?
These would be great questions for the representatives coming to the next meeting.
Also, somebody called about mold in their apartment, you guys get involved.
And don't get me wrong, well, first of all, I won't go out to a housing complaint all by myself, so I always drag somebody with me. I'll take Jim with me if he's a building inspector, Mr. Aguirre, if he's available, because he has the housing training. I have gone and done housing complaints with Mrs. Grassi. I've done them with Mrs. Ferry, our animal control officer, because you've got to have a body with you. Mrs. Mello did one and I was on the video phone with her while she was there, because you just can't do these things by yourself.
And I'm only asking these questions so that when we put together what your job descriptions are going to be, just have more information, not second guessing you or.
Yeah. An education.
Yes.
Based on Thursday night's decision at the state level that was mentioned by Mr. Cavallo through Serpent. With Dayton being added into the MBTA impact zone. And with the mandates at this point of the state in regards to 40Bs, I have a feeling housing is going to be a greater issue in this town real soon. 15 units per acre is a lot of houses. And I would imagine that developers will use the 40B card in this community. Because there's money to be made. That's very scary thought. But knowing one of the developers, that ruling just potentially doubled the amount of units that he can put in on property, because now they can go up. And we're talking affordable housing units. So
I'm not familiar with what happened Thursday night.
Dayton somehow had avoided being included in the MBTA impact zone because of the line coming down through Fall River. Mr. Mullen, what happened to include us?
So we weren't included in the draft regulations. The draft regulations do not extend Dayton. And then honestly, I thought, okay, because we weren't in the draft. So I did very conventional logic, that we're not going to be included in the final. So I need to get to the bottom with Serpent to find out exactly what changed, like in the state regulation process. But according to Mr. Cavallo's email Wednesday night, something did change, and it's something that we're gonna, it's gonna be front and center at this point. So we have to look into exactly what it means, and how we go forward. I mean, so I know that other communities who have full-time planners, and who have been affected by this, in terms of the draft regulations, this has been all they've been working on. So, like now we have to figure out a way, conceivably with Shepherd's help, to really come up with a way to, respond and deal with this.
So they changed the 40B regulation with how many units are allowed per,
Only if you're within so many miles of the train line.
Yes, but if a community, if a part of a community falls within so many miles of like an MBTA station, I believe it is. Like it doesn't only, I believe it doesn't only affect that part of the community that is still around the MBTA station or the commuter rail station. It applies to the, so yeah, like how, so once there's that nexus, I believe it applies to the whole community. So not just the area. So like in a community, where that, a threshold is reached. But so as I mentioned, because we haven't been included in it. I mean, as all of us, we try to triage every day. So, and that's one area that I haven't been. So because I thought we were, not included. And but at this point, we're all gonna need to get up to speed on that fairly quickly.
so is what you're saying, the zoning board previously, gentlemen, 1 in 4 houses was affordable in a 40B. Is that changing that number? Now it's going to be,
To be honest with you, I don't even, so I can't even guess, I would just be guessing.
oh, okay, so that has, I misunderstood.
So I don't really know. So,
Yes, so the density for 40B was like between like 8 and 12 units per acre, but now the same thing goes to
15.
units per acre. No, but a normal 40B, like 8 units per acre was standard. And now they're doubling it.
They can go up. If you want to see an example of it, I tell people what you can do, drive up 104. Right near the NIP, right near the Bridgewater Rainham line. You'll see an example. That one is affordable housing.
And that would be part of the zoning board negotiating with the 40B developer.
I'm not so sure. I've heard 2 things on that.
That one's on sewer.
I'm sorry?
That one's on sewer, which makes a big difference. And they also have large quantities of wetlands that count towards their acreage. So the count is not 15 units per acre. It's down around the 8.
How many?
It's down around 8 units per acre.
Okay.
It just looks like a lot because they jammed it in because they don't have so much land that they couldn't use.
Yeah, some have said that ZBA rules apply. And some are saying that they can be superseded because we don't meet our 40B requirements. So I'm not sure.
Yeah, we're not in safe harbor or probably anywhere near it.
No.
What,
I knew you were gonna ask that question.
because I've been asked it too. It's like, we're about 6%.
I think it's less than that.
Oh,
Last time I saw
Oh, yeah.
it was 4 something, but the last time I looked at it, it's not a ZBA anymore. It was before the last census. So that census was going to change it. Our numbers obviously went up, our number of residents, so our percentage was going to go down.
And plus, when you approve one, you kind of work backwards as well. Yeah, you increase you more and so your percent is very seldom going up.
Only if you have, the only way you deal with it is apartments, unfortunately.
right.
Because all the apartments would,
Negotiate more than,
and all the apartments would count. If it's affordable housing, all the apartments would count towards that, even though they weren't, they're market houses, they would count towards the affordable percentage wise, because all of them would be included, so.
but we've negotiated 27, 28%, not just the standard 25%.
And we've negotiated down to come in, the Pines, for example, came in at 66, negotiated down to 45, ended up being 33.
Right.
So half, so.
Okay.
And we don't have the storage in a lot of parts of, we're way off subject, by the way.
I just, when you say in the housing boom, I'm like, how is that? But yeah, that would be.
Yeah, actually, it does affect the Board of Health.
Right, because it was 100% apartments.
Yeah, so mold and. Oh,
Unless we have any further questions,
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
motion made in second. All those in favor, Mr. Pacheco?
Aye.
Mr. Karen? Chairman Hull is an aye. Health will need to do this.
Yes. I don't.
I make a motion to adjourn.
You can step down.
Up, down.
Down.
And then, are we on? Right, second, I didn't.
Yes.
Now what do we?
I motion passed.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
How are you feeling, Barbara?
Stop
You,
recording.
Fantastic.